It's 6:31 and I'll call this meeting to order, please. Can we start with roll call? Clerk Better. We're gonna get this here.
Trustee Check.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fisher. Here. Trustee Hunter. Here. Trustee Foster. Here. Trustee Ostrander. Here. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And if someone would make a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda. I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. And before we go to the agenda, actions and presentations, I just want to introduce to everyone Greg Sund, our interim administrator, and you can see Keller Rose, Trustee Ostrander, Foster. I don't know if you met, I think you met.
Yep.
Trustee Hunter. There today, okay. Trustee Check.
Everybody.
Yeah, and everybody in the audience, this is our interim administrator who started yesterday. So. So this is kind of good timing for him to hear what's been going on with water as well. So great timing. So with that, we do have two actions and presentations tonight. The first is consideration of approving a proposal for RFP 2602, the raw water metering RFP. So I wasn't sure if who was going to assist town staff, but who wanted to describe this? Is James? Is he? Oh, he's here. James?
Her recommendation is the one that's in there. I had just put town staff because I wasn't sure who was gonna be.
Right.
At the time, so.
So I guess I'd start out with questions that anyone might have, and I think probably the best person to ask them of is James. Or BJ.
BJ also here.
And they both were, okay. Do you all feel like, I mean, have you read the packet? Did you want a little background?
Yes. I would like some background.
Okay,
Yes,
if one of you would just give a brief summary of the proposal that you received and the information you found out about the company whose name is escaping me.
Native Sun.
Native Sun, thank you. And go ahead and introduce yourself too, because I'm sure people in the room and online.
Yeah, I'm BJ Elkins. I'm a project engineer with Respect. And Dave Stearns, also a project engineer with Respect.
Thank you.
So just the background on the project itself, and the recommendation. Is that the question?
Yes.
So the project, it's a raw water monitoring project. There's 4 monitoring locations up on Mount Lamborn. 3 of them are within this county, and then 1 of them is actually in Gunnison County, the Lakeport location, which is also the hardest to access location. So you'll notice there's an adult, a cost adder, and that's for the Lakeport location. And that's primarily because it's the hardest to access location. The intent of the design is to provide improved data on the amount, the quantity of water that is being captured at for those 4 different locations. There's also some additional benefits of understanding the amount of water that's spilling at a couple of the locations. So in general, the idea is more flow data that's upstream of the treatment facility. And the letter of recommendation is for Native Sun, who is the one low and responsible bidder. We've listed Xfield as well, but they were considered to be disqualified.
And they were disqualified. One reason was they did not get it in time. Was that correct?
Theirs was on time for this project. They also bid on the Western Loop project. They were in time for raw water monitoring, but there were errors in the bid form.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't realize they didn't list one as well. Okay, thanks. One of the things I wanted to bring up that they had put in the packet was the difference in the bid from Native Sun and the amount of money that has been established. What's that, by can't remember the amount of money, but it's about a
541, 496.
thank you. It's about a $23,000 difference between what the engineering, what respect estimated for it versus what this particular company has designated in their bid. And I just want everyone to know that is not a problem. We have fund balance in our water project, so covering that 23,000 is not an issue. We do not need to go look for more grant money. We already have the money in our current budget. So that is not an issue. I just want to get that off the table.
Oh, that's good to know, because
Yeah.
I thought it could take up to 6 months.
Yeah, and we don't need to do that. We have fund balance that's readily available to the tune of right now about 1.4 million, I believe, in the water.
That was one of my questions.
So that is not an issue. So with that introduction, do the trustees have questions for BJ or Jean? Yes. Go ahead.
As far as the recommended well water monitoring, is this the extent of it, or is there more to come after this?
Probably more to come after this. There's quite a few intake locations that we'll talk about more in the water, the roundtable discussion later. So this is only kind of a slice of the water that's available, but it is the majority of the water that is currently being captured and sent to the treatment plant currently.
So how big of a slice as far as ultimately the raw water monitoring that we want to have in place? How much of that is covered in this proposal?
That's to be determined, I would say. It's gonna be up to the town in terms of what the tracking will look like in the future. I know that Jonathan Stevens can be talking somewhat on the available water and recommendations for future monitoring.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, I think it would be great. You can, the only other thing I would add on is, the timing of the selection of these 4 locations actually worked really well with phase 1 of Brightwater's work. They were identified as, the 4 most important locations for understanding liquid water versus, paper water, which we'll get into later too. So they were prioritized, but they're.
So is it okay if I add just some context also? So I think I was actually after you guys had already initiated this project for these monitoring locations, the state came out with some water measurement rules. And we're actually, the town is an objector to that, basically just participating with the state. And so that process is currently going on. Doug from their firm and myself have been involved in that with the water attorneys, Bill Wambacher. And so to answer your question, the springs that are currently feeding the upper treatment plant are all going to be included in this monitoring, which is the most important aspect in the short term. In the longer term, we will also have to include what I refer to as the lower springs, which are the springs that historically fed the lower treatment plant. And so that we're still kind of working through the details. We're trying to get away from every tiny spring needs to be individually monitored. And the state has been great to work with us in terms of identifying what Respect has proposed to monitor and saying, yes, that meets our criteria.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question is more for staff, but I don't know if anybody other than town administrator Wynn is going to be able to answer this. But when we were going through the capital improvement for the budgeting, we had listed a project total for well water monitoring of $851,500. And I'm just wondering if
If the difference is another,
if that work that's included in the current CIP is what's included here. Or if the CIP takes.
I actually think I can answer
Okay,
that.
great.
That accounts for contingencies in the engineer's estimate.
But not additional monitoring. It's basically
Correct.
great. Thank you. That was my question too.
let me do one add-on before you ask. So what Jonathan was just referring to is a rulemaking that the town has been working with CDPHE on. that's essentially a carve out for Paonia.
Division of Water Resources.
Oh, sorry, Division of Water Resources under CPHE. Or no, Division of Water Resources, strictly, okay. And we'll be providing more information on that once we see how all of the negotiations come out. So that'll be something that'll be brought up either on the agenda, or a work session. I don't know the outcome of it yet. So I just wanted you to know that's something they've been working on, because I think the way some of the statutes went, the town of Paonia would have been quite penalized with our spring, because we have such an elaborate set of springs. To have tried to have achieved that statute, I think was not going to be possible. Is that a reasonable?
Yes, it was a very prudent decision to get involved as an opposer. And the state has been very receptive to coming up with a stipulation that addresses the town's very specific needs and making sure that it's not subject to future interpretation.
There'll be more on that. So go ahead.
That's one of my questions.
Oh, okay.
The other one was, I may be confused on the timing, but I had thought that we had started monitoring water like a year or two ago. So can you just help me clear up what's going on there?
It basically, the discrepancy is, we have temporary monitoring, the devices that were installed as, in conjunction with the work that Brightwater's doing is the devices we installed are not going to provide very precise data, and the devices that we're installing are long-term permanent data that can be remotely accessed and monitored. That's going to be there for years and years and years.
Right, and so are these replacing 4 existing temporary ones, or how many are there currently that are in that like less accurate status that you're describing?
Do you remember how many?
Certainly the 820 splitter would be replaced with what you guys are installing. So that's definitely a 1-for-1. So, and Lake Fork. So that's definitely 2 that will be replaced from the temporary.
So how many have we had in place and for how long?
I think all told, we probably have on the order of 6 to 8 temporary. And we're because we had good data at the water treatment plant, but we didn't necessarily know where that water was coming from.
Right.
So the temporary has provided a lot of insight into which springs are actually producing water at what time that's being measured down at the treatment plant. But certainly what they're proposing and have designed is going to be order of magnitude more accurate than the temporary installation.
I think there's over
And
10.
how long have those
Are there that many? I'm sorry?
How long the temporary's been in place?
We've been collecting data now for I think about, what was it, 12 to 18 months? I know we've got over a full year.
I would say we put them in, and that was either 2024, I believe, so.
Probably 18 months.
2 years.
Okay, and then just to clarify what you mean by accuracy, what order of magnitude are we talking about here in terms of what's more accurate and how much more accurate?
The pressure transducers, all they're doing is literally measuring pressure that can be then converted to a depth of water. And so then that depth of water, we use different hydraulic equations based on the configuration of wherever it's installed, right? So these spring boxes, sometimes it's an outflow height, and then we're running the Manning's equation to figure out what the flow is through that pipe based upon the stage and that the pressure transducer is measuring. And I will let them, and so that if we're getting, say, 15% accuracy, that's great. With that kind of, 10 to 15% is about as good as you can get with that kind of a setup.
In some cases, we might not be getting that.
That's ideal, yeah.
We did, BJ in particular was out there taking very detailed geometric measurements, speak to that, of those locations to try to get those as accurate as possible, but there's only so much you can do.
Right, and so thank you for explaining the actual process. So this new monitoring, what sort of accuracy rates are we talking about with the 4 new monitors?
It's going to be over 95%.
Oh, great, so.
Very, very highly accurate for a very wide range of flows from the summer to the winter.
Thank you.
Questions from trustees? See none, folks in the audience, if you want to come up and speak for 3 minutes on this topic, please come on up. Okay, seeing none, okay, anyone on Zoom, I don't see hands up. There's, okay. No hands, nobody wants to comment online, anyone walking in?
Test. How do I raise my hand?
Oh. We hear a voice.
Hi,
Go ahead, give us your name and if you live in town or out of town. Right now, you're a disembodied voice.
right now I'm a disembodied voice. Hi, my name is Tyler Woodard. I'm a geophysics water locator, and I study precision well locating and locate water sources for people all over the United States. I was just in Paonia on business and I saw the posters about water restrictions and checked in with the town hall and have chatted briefly with Ruben and Jordan and Kala, and wanted to share some ideas on water. A lot of towns and countries have had success drilling into fractured bedrock to contact confined aquifers, which often feed surface spring sources. And there's a history of that going back to the 1800s. Professor Nordenskjold wrote a paper drilling for water in primary rocks that was nominated for the first Nobel Prize in physics. And since then, a lineage of fractured bedrock hydrogeology and primary water locators have located water for countries in some of the most arid places in the world, across the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Europe, North and South America, and Australia. A lot of people have attained sustainable, safe, high quality water by going deeper than a surface spring into the confined aquifer transmissive fractures that can be connected to large regional water sources. The town I'm from in Northern California drilled a well 700 feet into bedrock and intersected a 1 foot and a 2 foot transmissive fracture, which produced over 350 gallons a minute of 150 ppm, super pure, super high quality, drinkable from the tap, and is their main artery water supply. 20 years later, they've done 20 years of hydrogeological studies, well monitoring, have noticed that it hasn't affected surface seep and spring supplies. And that's just one example of thousands across the world, including some municipalities and even heads of state and countries that have pursued this kind of water. And I'd love to share more about that later. And I think that the Right Water study has raised a lot of great points, have illuminated a lot of great information, and have in the report highlighted some of the limitations and potential greater potential for water beyond the scope of their geophysics. The two-dimensional electroresistivity was looking 50 to 150 feet down, which can give you a good idea. And we could go across the springs and further up slope on the mountain above the decreed areas. And
Tyler?
look down.
I
Yes.
have to, it's 3 minutes. Did you not set the timer?
Hey, you know,
Sorry,
Okay.
I
Tyler,
didn't see the timer. Yep.
Yeah, your 3 minutes is up, but we're appreciate that you're going to participate in the work session as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else that walked in the room that wanted to speak for 3 minutes? Come on up, Shereen.
Patterson in town, in my property on Rio Grande, the aquifer is at 20 feet down. We had it drilled, well, we didn't have it drilled, it's been drilled since decades and available, so there is aquifer. water available for many properties in town.
Thank you. Anyone else? that walked in?
Yeah, I would just follow up on that. I talked to another person that lives on Rio Grande and we got an estimate.
Oh, wait, could you give us your name and whether you live in town or out of town?
Arnie Ostrander and I now live in Hutchins. I was
Thank
a
you.
manager for 10 years.
Okay,
So I talked to another person on Rio Grande and I actually worked up some numbers and their estimates because he didn't have exactly what was going on, but all the houses along Rio Grande that are north of Fourth have a real issue with water flooding their basement, right? And so doing an estimate on what this one individual was getting, it's about 3,000 gallons a day come into his basement. And the worst part is they have nothing to do with it, right? There's no ditch. They can't get it into the North Fork River at all. And so all that water now is going into the sewer system. So we have all this pure water, and that's 3,000 gallons a day, and there's 10 houses along that stretch. So there's a huge amount of water that is not being utilized.
speak to us. Yeah, if you could speak forward.
So there's water not being utilized. And worse, it's being put in to have to be cleaned in the sewer system. So it's something that really needs to be addressed, but the important question is, can this water be utilized? And can someone answer, how many gallons of water would be in what we would call, a water share?
And I'm not gonna have any answers. Hang on. Let's leave your question there
Okay,
and we can, during the work session, we could address it. I don't want to do it back and forth.
thank you. Anyway, it's just, there's a lot of water that's not being utilized, and worse, it's being having to be processed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that walked in or would like to speak? Sure, come on up. All right, give us your name and if you live in town or out of town.
I live in town. My name's Harold Line. This past week I was at a meeting for Stewart Ditch. That was citizen created and it dovetails with, I think, what's being discussed here. And it was actually, what's the word I'm looking for? It was shocking. The lack of basic knowledge within the collective body of all of the shareholders. So I would just mostly hope that looking forward, this would be something to consider because the relationship between shareholders on ditch rights to water management in the valley is fundamental, and there's no infrastructure. There's no basic principles in effect for shareholders on those lines. So the acrimony between everyone who shares rights to the ditch was astonishing. Like, people were accusing people in other sections of the water portioning of taking their shares, whereas some people were flooding and other people had no water. So there's not even a consistent outlet system. This is all apparently pushed onto the shareholders. There's no governing body whatsoever. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, to think in terms of managing water in the valley. If all of the ditch shareholders are in that policy, there's no way that's going to be effective in the long term. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room who wanted to speak? Or anyone online? I know there were more people than we can see. Any hands up? Ruben,
Mayor Page, you want to clarify what they're speaking on?
hang on.
Because it's not a general
Um,
topic.
I would rather that when you begin your presentation, could you make a distinction between our potable water that we're working on and the ditch water systems? So.
Well,
just-
right now, that's meant is on the agenda item. It's
I know,
not
but
on
we
the
don't
agenda.
do it back and forth.
I understand. I'm just saying, I think it would be helpful for the audience to clarify what the comment is on right now. Because the general work session hasn't started, but.
Oh, right,
I'm
right.
reading in the comments specific to an.
Oh, I
agenda
see what you're saying. Yeah, it's,
Of water problem.
Gotcha. yeah, so we're working on our raw water monitoring RFP is what, thank you. Now I understand what you're saying. That's what the comment should be on, not, the work session hasn't started yet. So we're trying to get through an approval of a contractor to put in the raw water metering. So anyone have any comments on that? Okay, seeing none, I will turn it back to the trustees. If someone, any more questions that came to mind, or if someone would like to make a motion?
And I move to approve the proposal RFP 26-02 raw water monitoring.
Do we need the name of the contractor in there? Okay, could you,
With Native Sun Construction as the contractor.
what's that? And the amount?
And the amount so we're going with the larger sign,
564.
it's $564,974.
Okay. Okay,
I second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Get started on that. And then the second piece of this special meeting is fire restrictions. Resolution.
I can speak on that one.
Yes. Great,
So
thank
I'm
you.
sure most of you know that the county actually implemented their stage 1 fire restrictions over the weekend. And so we were prepared for this. We were just waiting for the county to lead suit. So since we had a special meeting, we figured it was the best time to go ahead enact a resolution for them in Paonia as well. So we're following the county.
Okay, any questions on the fire restrictions resolution? Any comments from the audience on the fire restriction resolution? And it is to go into effect. Is it immediately?
9 p.m. 9 p.m.
9 p.m. tonight, okay. Okay. Seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion on the resolution?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to pass resolution number 0926, enacting stage 1 fire restrictions within Paonia Town.
Okay,
I said,
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes, and unless there's anything else, I am going to adjourn the special meeting, and we will rotate directly into our work session. And what would be great, so we have representatives from the 3 consulting firms and / engineering firms that the town has been relying on for the last, in the terms of SGM, probably at least the last 5 years, I think. And Brandon Bear with SGM is going to join us by Zoom, and he had some other commitments that he may not be online yet. He'll join us as soon as he can. Brandon, you're there, great. So Brandon is with SGM, and if the 3 of you would reintroduce yourselves down to the room full of people and who you're with, that'd be great.
Sure, Jonathan Kelly with Bright Water Engineers.
BJ Elkins, project engineer with Respect.
And James Torrens, also a project engineer with Respect.
Thank you.
And I'm Brandon Bear with SGM. I'm principal over here at SGM.
Great, thank you. So Brandon, did you want to kick this off with some of the background? We have historical events that led to the current water situation, kind of a tag team between Respect and you, Brandon, but
Sure.
we'll let Brandon get started.
He also have one.
Yeah.
Oh, who?
Doug Schwinkies.
Oh, is Doug online?
Doug's online too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. I didn't realize that. Would you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
Yes, Doug Schwenke with Respect Company, also a practice lead and been working with the town since 2019.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Brandon, if you're good with a little history, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, sure. Just a little background. SGM has been working with the town, it's at least project number wise. Our stuff goes back to 2013. From a water system standpoint, we really got involved, I'll say, with just after the 1 million gallon tank was taken offline, and for rehab. So part of that project that SGM got involved with was pouring a new floor in that 1 million gallon tank, and then also doing helping the town with the coating system to put that tank back online. Subsequent to that, we've also done some water line rehabs, mainly, Box Elder, 3rd Street, Clark Ave, Doris Ave. Those are some other water system improvements, and most of those were to address, I'll say, water leaking or water, known areas that the town was having trouble with. The 1 million gallon tank was never, once it was finished, the previous staff, public works staff made the decision not to put that tank back online. And being able to float for the current water demands, float off the upper 2 million gallon water tank and upper plant, the Lamborn plant, purely for maintenance reasons. They didn't want to have didn't want to run two facilities. Most of the raw water is all directed to the upper plant as well. So that's a brief history of what we've been involved with. Yeah, I'll take questions from there, I guess, if there's discussion there.
Yeah, if people have questions for Brandon, I think because he probably can't hear you unless you come to the podium. It might be good to come on up here if you have a question for him. And for trustees, I say just go ahead and ask. Don't wait for me to.
Yeah, and I'll stay online till the end. So if questions need to come later, I'm happy with that too.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Just a question, Brandon, do you think the state, when was the last time you checked the state of that tank? Is it something that we could fill up if we wanted to?
So SGM hasn't looked at that tank since it's probably been and I'm gonna guess here. I'm gonna say 2016 was the last time we probably had any involvement in that lower tank. So it's been a while before we looked at that tank. The other thing I should note in the history there is that we're also involved with I'll say the temporary storage tank in the rehab of the 2 million gallon tank, and then I'll say converting the temporary tank that we have now into a raw water tank for the town to use for additional storage.
Thanks. And I know Jordan, you had your hand up. Go ahead and speak up, please. Thanks.
Okay, the status of the tank is that it's still existing. It's full of water that was treated a long time ago. It is a concrete in-ground storage tank that is not fully sealed off. There was talks of us when we did the 2 million gallon rehab to put that back online while treating water from the 2 million gallon back into distribution, which also would have left us running two plants at the same time, and one of them would be very kind of fickle because we would be going straight into distribution. There's still water in it because that tank will heave due to groundwater. So groundwater that's already been addressed, there's so much groundwater in there that if we remove water from there, it will heave that tank and make it unusable again. The condition is poor quality of all the equipment in there, whether it's due to just kind of dry rotting of plastic or anything else. We've had a rep out there. We've attempted to get it back online. It cannot pass an integrity test. Thus was the decision for the temporary tank. It's got some issues there and would never be able to feed all of our customers at the same time.
Because it only really ran into mostly the town customers, right? Not all the consecutive systems.
Correct. It's almost even more of a transmission line that goes to the old 500,000 gallon tank that then would go into distribution. So it runs an old asbestos concrete line down there where it would then go into distribution should we distribute it there. All of this sounds horrible. All of it sounds bad.
Jordan,
Jordan,
just to confirm, when you're talking integrity test, you're talking about the membranes, right?
Correct. Yes, they have to be able to not have any breakthrough.
Correct.
Yeah. That's kind of a higher level thing. I don't know how deep we need to get into that. Something we run every single week at the 2 million gallon plant to make sure that it's functional and there's not a way for cryptosporidium or giardiasis to break through. Those membranes are spaghetti, really tight. They only allow water molecules through. They won't even allow air through. That's why we do the integrity test, and it is introducing air to see if there's any failure.
Jordan, could you describe the fact that what was there, the temporary tank is now going to be purchased by the town and converted to raw water? Can you just describe the timing on that and what Brandon is working on?
Timing is a little bit here and there. We're definitely going to have to do some repiping, but it will be cut off from the distribution system. I have an idea in my head, but it's still a working idea where we're going to tie in and we're going to capture our spring's flow, because if the 2 million gallon treatment plant shuts off, we can still continue to collect that water, and it will help us out all the way by collecting that water and then reducing the pressure that goes into the plant, because we run it through a pressure reducing valve into our kind of raw water tank before we pump it through our skids. And sometimes those pressures are extremely high, especially from the Lake Fork German Creek Springs. So this will allow us to still collect that without having to spill any. So we're still collecting all of our decreed water right. And that temporary storage tank is kind of like a big balloon made out of a membrane that is guaranteed for 20 years. And we're, roughly a year in. But for 19 years, we could utilize that while we go into our CIP phase 2 before getting a more permanent up there. But it was what ran clean water, drinking water into the town for almost 9 months.
Yeah, while the 2 million gallon tank was empty and getting relined, this temporary tank, which if I remember correctly is 725,000 gallons.
Yeah, I think it's 750 to 850.
Yeah.
We
It's even
were
bigger. Good.
It's a little bigger than that, yeah, Paige. It's just a shade under 800,000, if you will.
Yeah. So that was serving as the raw water source for the users. So now
it was serving as a potable, yeah.
The finished water was coming from that while the tank was being relined. Now the tank relining is over and we are now getting water out of the 2 million original metal tank. So this other one, the thought is, let's buy it and use it for raw water storage, which then can go in. And what Jordan, you were just saying, it'll put less strain on on the Lamborn treatment plant.
Correct. Yeah. And you're saving up that much water to be able to use, especially in a time of, I'm not going to say crisis like this yet, but we are in a drought and it could become a crisis. So collecting as much as we can is absolutely the play that we're looking at doing.
Anybody have questions about that piece of the water system? Mary, I see your hand. Come on up.
Hi, Burton and Brandon. Good to see you. Very different. Anyhow, my question is, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have several springs. They're not really well-producing springs, but we do have several springs that only go down to the 1 million gallon tank. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, are we capturing that water at all?
Currently, we are not. We are in talks with Right Water, with Jonathan there, who's definitely the homie, to figure out how we can get that coming back over the mountain so that we can produce it at our plant that will supply all of town and everybody else that is based off that.
Thank you. And then my other comment was, at one point, we had talked about using the 1 million gallon tank, for reserve water, and then second, to do a pipe the water up to the 2 million gallon tank from those springs. But it just isn't feasible at this time. So trying to collect that water and bring it over the hill because on another drainage and utilize and keep that water, because at some point it's a matter of water rights too. So
yeah, I think that's phase 2. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, come on up, Jeremiah.
Yeah, just from the engineers, what's the cost estimate of Decommissioning the 1 million gallon plant and then pumping it back up to the Lamborn site. What would that cost? Just curious. Ballpark, cheaper than good.
Anybody have any idea?
Who wants to brave that one?
Yeah.
Transmission.
You would need a pump.
Yeah, you'd have to turn that plant into a pump station to turn it back, to pump it back up. But if we're gonna intercept the springs, and Jonathan will probably talk about this a little bit more, if we're gonna intercept the springs and bring it over to the upper plant, that'll solve that issue, and that'll all be done by gravity.
But you don't have a cost estimate for that, do you?
No, I don't.
We did preliminary cost estimating for future capital improvements beyond capital improvement phase one. I'd have to dig that up and look for it, but memory serves me, it's north of $3 or $4 million. So
Yeah, it's gonna be substantial.
Yeah, I see. And Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the other reason why we feel like bringing it back around the mountain to us, even if it might cost a little more, is a better long-term solution, because pump maintenance and everything involved in that, just after thinking through it, it makes sense that we just bring it back down, get it into that temporary storage tank, and just run it off the 2 mil, because the 2 mil is appropriate for the pressures in the system. It feeds all of town. It feeds all of out of town, which is also a big thing. Whether or not the town takes responsibility for the water systems off of us, we continue to be able to feed them from there.
So you're saying there's a way to get the spring water to the 2 million without having to pump it from the 1 million?
To be determined.
Okay,
That's what we're working on. It's a big part of the study.
great. Okay. Yes, come on up, Alice. You get your name right, didn't I?
I'm Alice Elliott, I live in town. I'm just wondering if we're gonna do an overview.
Yeah.
You wanna keep going?
If anybody is prepared to do that, because that would be really helpful. Because already I'm in the weeds. I'm like,
Are you?
where am I? What are we talking about? So yeah, starting with an overview, if there is one, that'd be great.
Do we have a map to project?
And the diagrams, maps are always.
Is there one of
we
the,
have some pretty maps.
there's some in the agenda packet, right? Maybe project that one or the next one
Page. Oh, there is the work session packing.
in the work session packet, yeah. Is that the best one to start with for you all?
I think so. We're gonna start at the top of the hill, so that's a little bit of a reverse order for project overview, but I can.
Have you guys, is there any other background that we want to provide in terms of the 2019 outage? And
Yeah, I think the ask is to help everyone visualize what the town's assets are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they need a microphone over there?
I don't know how you do that.
Microphone there. Oh, you.
Or you can sit here.
Right.
So this remove, you just sit there, yeah.
Microphone's up here.
It's gonna take this away so it's not confusing.
For posterity.
So again, James Darnes, project engineer with Respec. The town of Paonia, a lot of people here have probably heard that you have a very sophisticated, complex raw water collection system. This exhibit depicts the raw water collection system crudely. Collecting water from somewhere in the ballpark of 36 springs spread out across Lamborn Mountain. those springs collect water into pipelines that are diverted to what are called the Lamborn facility or upper facility or the clock facility or the lower facility. When Brandon was speaking, he was referring to the 1 million gallon tank being taken offline. That is the lower clock facility and the facility that does not provide water to the entirety of Paonia's distribution system. The upper or Lamborn facility is able to supply the entirety of the town's distribution system, and including its consecutive systems, and why it's been prioritized both for diversion of raw water and capital improvement.
Can you all see which plan is which on the diagram?
Yes.
Okay.
So, in a nutshell, that's where the town's getting its water and where it's diverting it to. The lower and the upper plant both have storage, both have treatment. Again, the lower treatment and storage is offline. So the town is reliant on the upper water treatment plant and storage facilities. And that is also why the SGM and the town have worked to convert their temporary storage to raw water storage, because it does provide some redundancy in water supply at that location.
The next diagram, is it?
Yeah, so if I think if we skip ahead, one of the other things that would be helpful is for the town to see its distribution system. So if you can move forward in the slide deck. It may not look like a lot is happening compared to, say, if you were to look at Grand Junction's distribution system, or certainly some larger towns. But I think what's very noteworthy here is in the lower right corner. I don't have a seat here, so I can't really drive, but in the lower right corner. Good point. I have to get closer. The rest of the, yeah, we go. So this is the upper Lamborn facility where the 2 million gallon tank has recently been rehabbed. And one project that is on the docket for Tuesday board meeting is called the West Loop. So for those that are paying that close attention, when we were referring to the West Loop or the East Loop, we were referring to the two main arteries or pipelines delivering water from the Lamborn facility to not depicted on this exhibit in this map is the town supplies water to 24 consecutive systems that have their own distribution pipelines. The town is not responsible for maintaining those today. But the other noteworthy piece of this is not only that each of those lines is roughly 2 miles, but they also cross through multiple pressure zones. So the elevation difference between Lamborn and town is too high to allow for just gravity pressurizing their systems without reducing pressure along the way. So the town, if you skip ahead, there's one more exhibit I think is worth noting. Is this one. These are the 9 distinct, 8 distinct pressure zones within the town's distribution system. What this means for Jordan and Derek is added complexity for maintaining and operating the system. The licensing requirements for operating this type of distribution system are higher, and each one of these zones is split by what we call pressure reducing vault, where pressure is reduced from one pressure zone to another. And that is hardware that has to be routinely maintained and replaced. I think between the raw water system and this, you can hopefully better conceptualize everything we're going to talk about today. Does that help?
So Brandon, is there anything else you would like to add in before we?
No,
move on?
no, I don't have anything else to add right now. Like I said, I'll stick around for questions and chime in when needed.
Okay, so the next phase was to have Jonathan talk about the investigation into firming the spring water supply, improving the raw water collection and delivery system. But before we do that, are there questions about the town's current system that anyone would like answered?
Can you just show us on the map where the 4 monitors are going in, so everybody knows where those are going in?
Yep, it's actually on the other map.
Go back to that. Well, that one, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Actually have them. We also have the temporary pressure transducers. See. So we have monitoring stations where these M's are. So we have one that's actually at the intersection of Old Original and that name is escaping me. The Reynolds and Old Original, and then we have Lake Fork, which is the Gaddles, really hard to access site. We have the German Springs location, and then we have this blow up box that will basically tell us that overflow just before the plant. It's currently not being monitored when there's water spilling.
Thank you.
And then all these little white dots are where the temporary pressure transducers are located right now.
Any questions? Yes, come on up, just because we can't, oh, it's hi Rick, I didn't recognize you, come on up.
Rick Stelter in town. I think it'd be helpful to have a little discussion on how much water we're collecting from the lower system in a proportion to the upper system. And I understand that it varies by season, by whatever, but we should discuss how much water we are not collecting and using. Thanks.
Anyone else before we move on? Yes, come on up, Bill.
Thank you. Bill Brunner from Paonia. So I'm going to make a statement that the basic problem of Paonia's water is that we don't have a storage facility for our raw water. And a 2/3 of a million gallon tank for raw water is essentially insignificant absolutely insignificant for seasonal storage. And it would represent 3 or 4 days worth of water in an emergency situation. So it shouldn't be viewed as a panacea for Paonia's water problem. It could be very useful in an emergency event. And that would include low spring flows that we're going to be having if we're not having already, where the flow in barely matches flow out. That is our problem. And a statement was made that the 1 million gallon tank, it was a maintenance decision to leave it offline. And I would dispute that, having been involved in meetings at the time that was happening. It was left offline because there was no one competent to run it, and it was probably unusable anyway, because by the time it was remodeled and tried to brought back online, it was nothing but a collection of antique computer equipment and obsolete water handling equipment, and it would probably have to be gutted and rebuilt to be used at all. Then, of course, this is my opinion. You could, I hope so, tell me I'm wrong. So thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else who had questions for the consultants? Okay.
I've got a question, comment.
Sure.
As the water is coming down the mountain, they said that it's necessary to reduce the pressure in the pipes occasionally as it's dropping. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, that was a yes.
That was yes. Something for the town to consider would be in place of those traditional pressure reduction systems to run the water through a vortex. And with that elevation drop, there could be multiple opportunities to install a vortex-based micro hydroelectric, where you basically run the water through a large funnel that has a propeller in it hooked up to an alternator. Turbulent is a company out of Belgium or Germany doing this with great success. And the water spins through the vortex, and that will bring it back to 1 atmosphere of pressure. And for every few hundred feet you drop, you can install another one of these vortexers and be making a large amount of energy that could supply the other pumping needs to move the water around uphill or feed the power into town along the water line.
Okay, thanks. One other bit, would you explain the land ownership of where our springs are? That we don't own the land?
It's not necessarily true. We don't own all the land.
Well, no, what I want is the management, because it's Forest Service, which means the reason I want, because we are limited to what we can do up there through Forest Service permitting. So I'm just bringing that up, that even drilling a well, will take a lot of permitting because it is mostly on Forest Service.
We have the Forest Service land depicted in the green line,
Okay.
so all the pipeline that's to the right and the south, to the east and the south of that green line is on Forest Service land, and so that's a large amount.
And then what's to the upper part, is that private, and isn't there some BLM? Is there BLM in there? I don't think.
BLM it's like.
There is,
Yeah, so I'm just.
To the north of the Forest Service.
Yeah, okay. So I'm bringing it up because the town has to work within the confines of these land management agencies as well when they want to do anything on that land. So I'm just making that clear that, ideas have to have a long way to go to get them done. Even to get a permit to drill is going to have a lot of permitting to do.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the Lucas Springs area is actually primarily on town of Paonia land. Can someone clarify that?
Believe that the hatching is the location of In Holdings, the private land. If you see that location. So I don't think that Lucas, which would be the Upper Reynolds and the old original, are located on Paonia land.
But the hatching boxes within there are town of Paonia.
Correct. Yeah, I think that I think those hatching of private lands include both the town and I think also Bona Mesa has a small private parcel.
Yeah, but I understand Bona Mesa. There's an additional 40 acres that's grown privately within the LSU.
Is that in that upper right-hand corner? There's a hatching in the upper right-hand corner of the Forest Service?
No, it's adjacent to, it touches two sides of the town.
Oh, okay.
Can you show us? Yeah. This is mostly town. Bona Mesa owns a small segment down here. And then this 40 right here, which is not separately boxed, is a different one. I don't recall the name off the top. Thank you.
Oh, Jordan, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna touch on the vortex thing. We looked into something pretty significantly where we had a rep out for actually electricity generation at the 2 million gallon plant, and what we would have to put in to like generate electricity just to run the 2 million gallon plant was quite significant. It would have to be a huge station to power those pumps and everything like that. It's a while ago, so I don't even remember the cost. And then with the where it lays on the land, it crosses so many pieces of land that it might start on the Forest Service, but it it's not all owned by Town of Paonia. Last time I talked with the special use operations of the Forest Service, we were able to clear, I believe it was 5 feet from middle of pipe.
Under the special use permit?
No, that's our easement, was the 5 feet from middle of pipe. Special use obviously has a little bit more, but then you definitely have to do more paperwork for it and anything. But what we're permanently allowed is 5 feet off middle of pipe.
Thanks. With that, if we could go into the spring water supply with Jonathan.
A lot of excellent questions so far. I just want to say it's kind of jumped the gun because some of which we were going to discuss. So hopefully we can, I'm going to keep the presentation portion of this pretty short so that there's room for lots of questions. And I think that's okay with the board. So we are now working on phase 2 of the hydrogeologic study. Phase 1 was completed and presented to the board in October of 2025. Phase 1, can you go one up? Yeah. So this is the, we intentionally didn't show the springs on here. Because it's sensitive, we're trying to not, this is on public land and is publicly accessible. So we're trying to maintain the integrity of their water collection system and not have vandalism or various activities associated with these springs. So that's the reason that we're just showing the collection system as opposed to the individual springs. But the town has, I believe it's 9 spring complexes that feed the potable water system. And what's really, each one of these is a separate watershed. So you've got watersheds that come way over on the east side, Lake Fork, that's a tributary to Minnesota Creek. You've got German Creek in here. You've got Lucas Creek and Reynolds Creek, and then you've got Bell Creek in the middle here. Most of these are sub-tributaries to Bell Creek. And then way over here, you've got McDonald Creek. So it's a very large geographic area, and it is very complex, especially on a per capita basis. It might be the most complex in the Western US, as my colleague once said. It is right now for, so this is what I will refer to as the upper springs, and referring to those simply because they're the ones that are able to feed the upper water treatment plant, which is located right here. These spring complexes over here, I'll refer to as the lower, even though it doesn't look like it's lower, because those historically have fed into this pipeline, which historically fed the lower treatment plant. So these are the ones that right now have not been able to be utilized since that plant went offline. Do you guys know the timing of when, Jordan, do you know the timing of the line, when this line was put in that enabled the capture of the old original and Reynolds Creek springs over to the upper treatment plant?
I am not sure about when it was able to get put to the upper treatment. Are you talking about where the diversion came in?
Yes, sir. Yeah, when they because those historically were fed down to the lower plant, and then at some point this pipeline right here was put in that enabled those springs to be captured and delivered to the upper treatment plant and put into the distribution system. I think that was sometime between the lower plant going offline and now. I don't know the exact date of that. I don't know, Brendan, do you happen to know that date? Were you involved in that project?
We were not, Jonathan.
Anyhow, I guess my point is that that was a great implementation where, because these are really valuable springs for the town, and that enabled those springs to be collected and delivered to the upper treatment plant and therefore put to beneficial use. And so for the phase one of our work, that was primarily done in 2024 and 2025, we focused on the upper springs, and primarily because those were the ones that were pretty beneficially used and had the infrastructure in place to deliver it to the upper treatment plant. I guess I want to take a step back and say that working with Respect, the town personnel, Jordan in particular, we've done a lot of investigation to try to document the existing system. Literally, some of these spring boxes had not been seen. No physical eyes have actually been put on some of these remote boxes since the 1970s. So for 50 years, nobody had actually been to the physical location of some of these springs. They're very remote, and it took us a while. So we've been really working to try to once and for all document. And it was important that we document the location of the springs because the springs have water rights associated with them. Water rights have legal descriptions associated with them. And if they're not being collected where the legal description is, then you can't say that you're actually diverting that water right. It could be said that you're diverting a different water right that you're not entitled to. The town does have a very good water right portfolio. We've been working with Bill Wambacher and Sheila, thank you. They're excellent attorneys and they're getting through all of the paperwork because you have the decrees and then you have a lot of agreements with other water users that involve splitting the water during different times of year, different ratios. Some of the water rights. So some of those are via contractual agreements and some of those are based upon water right ownership. For example, Bone Mesa actually owns some of the water rights that the town also has an interest in. So those are different relationships because it's the core water right that's being owned by two different entities. In others, it's the town owns the water right, but there's a contractual obligation to provide water during certain times of year and certain amounts. As was discussed by Tyler, as part of phase one, we did a 2DR or two-dimensional resistivity survey to evaluate the potential to further develop some of the springs, some of the upper springs. I reported on that in October. I can answer some questions on that, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into the details of that. We did identify some saturated zones, and there is some potential there to develop those springs and potentially get additional yield. And I'll touch upon how we're addressing that in phase two in a moment. I think we've already talked about the pressure transducers being installed. BJ, correct me, I think we've got more like 10 to 12 pressure transducers currently in place throughout the system. And some of those are, in addition, most of them were over on the upper springs, but we did capture several of the springs that are in the lower system as well. Also part of the phase one was try to get a big picture understanding of the water rights. And the water rights are pretty complex, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on that tonight. I did want to, I think we put on the agenda, I think we used the term water resilience. I just wanted to quickly give, the EPA definition for water resilience. And it was the ability of communities, ecosystems, and water infrastructure like treatment plants and pipe networks to anticipate, withstand, recover from, and adapt to water-related shocks and stresses, such as droughts, floods, pollution, and climate change. And I would add in this environment, fires, right? We know that there's a current RAC that's occurring to look at the fire. And the Forest Service knows all very well about the fire danger in this area. And with all these springs located in fire-prone country, they're all susceptible, to fire being an impact both from a quantity and quality standpoint. So phase two, and I did want to give a shout out to the town because they have been very proactive in terms of securing funding to do this work. Phase one was a CWCB grant that enabled that work to be done. Phase two, the town applied for a USBR, US Bureau of Reclamation grant. And that work is going on. It's called a Water Smart grant.
Did you do the acronym you said, the first acronym, CW? Did you?
Oh, sorry, Colorado Water Conservation Board,
Just so everybody knows.
CWCB, and then the USBR is US Bureau of Reclamation. And so that's called the Water Smart grant. And there are a number of, so we responded to the request for qualifications for that and were awarded that contract, and we're working with respect on that as well. There are certain requirements that go into that Water Smart grant. One of them is an alternatives analysis. So some of the things that were being discussed and asked about in terms of pump stations and raw water storage, you guys must have been looking at my outline because there are three challenges that I would say that the town's water system currently has. One is that the lower springs can't deliver water to the upper treatment plant, right? The springs have a lot of seasonality to their flows. I mean, there are times when Jordan's having to spill water because he's got so much water. And then in late season, they drop off just kind of like a stream hydrograph drops off. And in the late season, it's a struggle to meet demands at times, especially in a dry year. And that folds into the last one, which is a fundamental lack of raw water storage. I think the raw water tank, the 725 or 750,000 gallons is certainly better than nothing, but it's as somebody said, I apologize, I don't remember who said it, but it really is not going to provide a long-term. It's not going to help you through a drought. It's going to be a short term that's going to be beneficial. But I would say that you're talking about 1 million gallons is about 3 acre feet. I would say that for the town's water system, you would want to normally have something on the order of probably 30 acre feet of storage that would actually enable you to go for an extended period of time. If there was a significant drop in the flow of the springs. So kudos that there's work being done, but part of the work that we're also looking at is raw water storage. The town does have some storage rights, and we're looking at how those can be potentially incorporated into the system as part of the alternatives analysis. And as it has been discussed, I think one of the main things, so when we initially looked at phase one, we were really looking at the ability to further enhance the upper springs to get more yield because those were already piped into the upper treatment plant. And that seemed to be the easy button because there wasn't additional infrastructure necessarily needed there. As we've done additional field work and looked more at the lower springs, what we realized is what somebody very astutely pointed out, is that there's a lot of flow and there's a lot of senior water rights associated with these lower springs. And so we are in the process right now of evaluating pipeline alternatives that can deliver the water and connect into this pipeline right here which can gravity feed into the treatment plant. So topographically, this does have enough elevation to get the water over there. We're looking at roots, of course, we're dealing with various property owners. There's a lot of challenges that this pipeline will have to overcome, but in the long term, I think it's the we will also be looking at a pump station, which somebody had asked about the cost, because the Bureau of Reclamation process requires you to do an alternatives analysis and say what was considered and why was that not the preferred alternative. So we will be looking at those various alternatives, but at this point in time, we think that the best way to get this water supply to the treatment plant is going to be a pipeline across here. So some of the other things that we are doing, so one of the reservoirs that the town has an interest in is over here. So it's not a great location from the perspective of it's not near the treatment plant or even where the pipeline to lead to this is the Gelwick Springs, for those that might be familiar with the system. And this is the Gelwick pipeline that feeds in over here. So part of the scope of work that was required in the USBR grant and in our scope of work is a hydraulic evaluation of the raw water collection system. So we have been working with Jordan to really so this is a preliminary mapping of the pipe network. Quite frankly, there's a lot of unknowns and we are still trying to identify. We go to a collection box, we see a pipe coming in. We don't know definitively where that pipe is coming from. So we are trying to work with Jordan. He's been great to work with. We were talking with him just yesterday on how we can figure some of this stuff out. There's inert tracer tests that can be done, for example, where you can go to a spring that you think is feeding the maize sump box right here. So the maize spring is right here, and we're pretty sure that this goes in, but we're not sure whether this actually comes in here or whether this connects into a pipe down here. So we're in the process of really trying to kind of like what we were doing for the upper springs, we're currently doing for the lower springs, to really identify where is the infrastructure, how does the infrastructure all interconnect, so that we can then be doing these alternatives analysis, the hydraulic analysis, to make sure, because if we start delivering this water over to this pipeline, does this pipeline have capacity for these additional supplies? So that's all part of the analysis, but we can't do that analysis until we have a good understanding of where the pipe is, how big the pipe is, what the material of the pipe is. One of the other things that we have in working with Jordan and other town staff identified is that even before, in its current state, and I understand, and this is not in any way to be negative towards the town, it's just those lower springs, right, haven't been feeding anything associated with the town's infrastructure. So there hasn't been a high priority to try to maintain that infrastructure, right? The priority has been the water that's actually supplying the system, that's supplying the residents with drinking water. So when we go out and look at some of these springs, we're like, wow, there's like more water bypassing the structure than is actually going into the structure and into the pipeline. So one of the things that we've kind of shifted our focus to, rather than trying to do more in terms of building on the phase 1 geophysics study and looking at where we might be able to develop additional supplies in the upper springs, we think that phase 2 should really identify how we can get the lower springs to the upper treatment plant. And so we've kind of pivoted
I mean, it's makes sense.
Yeah.
We have rights to it.
Yes, and if there's a phase three, maybe phase three is where you look at further developing those upper springs. But right now, this is the low hanging fruit in terms of you guys have senior water rights. And good supply from some of those springs, and we need to get it to a place where it can be put to beneficial use for the town. We've also, and was already discussed as part of the raw water measurement system. As we are trying to set up a system where we can measure. Lost my. There it is. Put in measuring devices that will, we're negotiating with the state to try to come up with a system where we can put measurement devices in there that will meet their requirements and give the town some certainty in terms of what will be necessary and acceptable to the state. Because, you know, you don't want to end up with an agreement with like the division engineer, because then the division engineer retires in 10 years and you're dealing with a new division engineer who might take a different, we're going to have that in writing in a stipulation with the state and working with the attorneys on that. So sorry, that was a lot in a short period of time, but I wanted to kind of give a broad overview of kind of where we're going with phase two. Phase two is very much active right now. I think that we are looking at, based on the milestones, I think we're looking at that concluding sometime next year. I'll get you a schedule of when I submit it to the USBR on that schedule, milestones. And so if it's okay with the board, open up for questions.
Yeah, I'd say board ask questions first,
yeah.
and then we'll offer it up to the.
Just suggest maybe take a quick break and then come back for questions, or should we just take individual breaks?
Oh, you know what? It's probably easier if we take one single break. Let everybody get a chance. So,
Thank you.
yeah, it's a work session, so let's just go have a break.
So
How
5
about
minutes, 10
come back
minutes?
at 8 o'clock. It's 8 minutes.
Thank-
How's that?
8 minutes.
Hold on. Yeah.
Take your seats, we'll get on, come on, so we can all go. Well, we're all educated. That's right. All right, John, and you are up to say the questions, right?
Yes,
That's what we-
can I also acknowledge my colleague?
Yeah. Yeah.
Claire Vavris, who co-presented our phase one findings, is also on the line, online, so if I need to phone a friend, she's already on.
I see a hand up, but I can't. I see, I don't know who, I can't tell the name, so.
That's Kate Hart.
We don't go to the board first.
Yeah, actually, let's do
Hey,
that. Hang on, you two
Paige,
online.
This is
Hold on.
Karen.
Hang on, Karen.
Okay.
Trustees, questions first? Jonathan? Hey, so Karen, I'll have you go first and then Tyler, and then we'll take people in the room. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, this is Karen Tarno. I am curious about the investigations into the lower springs, and looking at a potential tie-in. Do you or will you be collecting data to get a sense of whether, say, the seasonality of those springs is going to help us, augment when needed, or are we really going to need new additional storage in order to take advantage of what those springs can offer if we're going to deliver them to the treatment plant?
Great question, and we have some pressure transducers that have already been installed on some of the springs in the lower system, and I think some springs that are called Spore and Hole Patch. And we are planning on, we just talked yesterday, we're ordering the pressure transducers to install additional flow measurements so that we can evaluate the very question that you're answering. Is we know that those springs produce water, and at certain times of year, plentiful water, but the springs, some of them have more of a are fracture controlled, and they have a better year-round consistency to the flow. Others are fairly superficial in nature, and they just kind of go underneath the talus slope and then reemerge. And those basically respond almost like a surface water system would. And there's a sharp drop off after the spring runoff has melted. So we're in the process of getting those additional springs instrumented so that we can answer that question.
Tyler?
Hi, yeah. One of the challenges raised there was that the pipeline going from the lower springs is crossing a lot of different properties, and you might have to navigate agreements with various property owners. If those springs are abundant, and if storage is a limitation, and to facilitate agreement by landowners, one thing the town could consider is working with those landowners, perhaps grant funded or by the landowners, or in share with the town to install fire suppression tanks along the way. That if you need to cross someone's land and they're hesitant, offering a valve off of the water line to fill a 10 or 50,000 gallon water suppression emergency water tank that could be trickle filled and could be bled on site there and used in the case of a fire emergency. People really like that, and I think that's one avenue to explore with dealing with property crossing challenges. And then another is on the subject of pipelines. If you're looking at having to run new pipelines, I assume that if these things were installed in the 70s or 50s, that they're probably steel pipes, which is good. And one thing that's become very popular in the municipal sphere in the last years is HDPE HDPE pipe, which is that comes in big coils of black, hard plastic, inert, long-lasting, inexpensive pipeline. However, something I've seen in the Maui fires, the California Paradise Fire, the recent LA Pasadena fires is HDPE pipes were heated above 400 degrees, and somewhere between 400 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit, those pipes will undergo chemistry and release volatile organic compounds, VOCs, such as benzene and its aromatic ring compound cousins, which are hypercarcinogenic in any amount in the parts per billion range. It's a class 1 carcinogen. And this safe and inexpensive pipeline can quickly flood the water supply with some of the most potent carcinogens known. And those pipelines were buried at 9 inches or 1.5 feet deep, standard trenching, and the heat of the forest fires was sufficient to enact that chemistry and flood those municipal systems with carcinogens. So if you're looking at new pipelines and you are opting for HDPE, you probably want to bury it at least, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet deep. And so consider a deeper trenching. And on that note, on the note of trenching and pipelines, in 2010, the town of Paonia contracted Directional Drilling Technologies, which is now owned by a company called Ellison, to perform horizontal drilling into the spring sources on the Upper Reynolds Old Original Springs and the German Creek Springs, I think. And I don't know how deep those horizontal drill went, but they started within the spring decrees, side note there, and to go into the rocks to try to release more water. I was looking at their website, and they say that they can horizontal, directional, diagonal drill 8,000 feet in length, and they can lay plastic pipes or steel or metal pipes. And if you had a long pipeline to go, maybe you'd want to do business with those guys, Directed Drilling Technologies again, and have them. Yep.
Tyler, I'm gonna have you stop just so other people have some time. Can you wrap up are you finished? Can you just?
I'm complete in there. Just laying, if you have to lay new pipeline because it's insufficient in capacity, perhaps directional drilling would be cheaper than trenching and allow you to go deeper to get away from potential fire heat, which would make the system more fire resilient.
Okay, thank you. And Jordan, I see your hand up. I'm gonna let you go and then I'm gonna open it up to the audience. Go ahead, Jordan.
Okay, so HDPE, or however many inches down, might be a little bit cheaper in California, but here it is not cheap because we have to go below the frost line. And then to the directional boring point, that did, I believe, happen at Upper Reynolds, and they missed the fracture. So what they expected to be a really good producer is still producing, but we believe they missed the fracture. And so now there's a pipe up there in the mountain that's potentially able to do something for us, but it's not doing great for us. HDPE is a common practice that we use in town for connecting water lines and stuff. It's something that we're going to probably be using in the Western Loop. It is a great water line. It's a like a butt fusion that comes through with a vulcanizer. How practical is it for us to get that up there too, though? Because obviously it kind of happened before, but when you miss your target, collateral damage happens.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jordan. So questions from folks in the room? Come on up, Andy, just because we're only having you come up because then everybody can hear you.
Sure. Andy Deliverous out of town. So my question really jumps off of Rick's and Karen's and Trustee Calaro's point about monitoring. It's curious, when I hear things take years to monitor, or a year or 12 months, the question is, why aren't you monitoring the lower system right now? Is it fiscal? Is it just not part of the grant? But it seems if you're data collecting and you've got a window of weather and drought, it may set up some really interesting relationships between what's going on in the upper springs and what's going on in the lower springs. The other part of that question is integrity. So, when I'm looking at data, I want to know, well, okay, this is what this spring produced, but are the pipelines integral? Are we collecting all the water from that spring? I'm assuming that we are. Otherwise, if the numbers are low, the first question I think I would ask, or an engineer would ask, well, are we losing any water from what we're measuring? So I was just wondering what your views are about the integrity of the system and of the upper and lower, and if we're maybe a missed opportunity for whatever reason, that in the same window of weather, drought, and everything else, comparing those two spring systems may be very powerful.
Agreed, and we are trying to get those additional flow measurement devices in place next month.
I see.
So the parts are on order, and as soon as we get those in, we're going to coordinate with Jordan to get those installed. And you also, regarding one of the things that we are evaluating is not just monitoring, but also improving the collection so that we're not bypassing water, and that the water that's available coming out of the ground is in fact getting into the infrastructure.
Fantastic, thank you.
Jim, I saw his hands up again. I assumed it's up again. Okay, you're next, Jordan.
Jeremiah Garcia. Sorry, what's your name?
Jonathan.
Jeremiah. I was curious about the German Creek saturation zones and what you need to do to explore that further. I think from your last presentation, you said maybe it's just a pool of water deep down, or maybe something's feeding it. And so I'm just curious, like what it would take to explore that further, because if we just have to drill a little deeper there, probably be a much cheaper solution than cross country all this pipeline and then restoring all the infrastructure and the collection systems on the lower side. Just curious, you did mention fire hazards, and I just wonder what kind of watershed health exploration has been done. There's it's the Fish and Wildlife have identified a degraded wetland up there, and in the I think it's the Stevens Springs. It's like the giant basin once you go right up Bell Creek, right? It's just like this giant basin. It's just this giant collection basin. We have senior rights, points of diversion up above this wetland, so it's all piped. So it would be a perennial spring that would be feeding it, and then we have lower points of diversion that we could just augment water rights and just pull it from there. So I'm just curious if that's been explored, and if you knew about Buckhorn's reservoir feasibility study. They wrote off Todd Reservoir, they wrote off where I'm talking about where this wetland is, and they wrote off expanding Overland Reservoir. So I don't know if you've seen those studies, but I'm just curious. So we know there's a pocket of water that's underdeveloped. How do we figure out how much is there, what's feasible there before just there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of shit to rehab. Pardon my language. So to rehab up there before we can even like cross-country water, right? So, if you just answered like the question about German Springs, that'd be awesome.
About which?
German Creek Springs, the
saturation.
saturation stuff, yeah, what you're noticing there.
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed about where the 2DR survey had showed this. So basically it just resistivity, and so high resistivity zones are tend to be dry, and low resistivity tend to be saturated. And so that's what the data indicated. What it doesn't indicate is whether or not that's a pocket of water that's like stationary, or whether, because you do it along a line. And so what we know is that along that line, we're hitting water. We don't know that water is flowing through the plane where the survey was done, or whether it's stationary water that just happens to be a pocket, as Jeremiah said. One of the other things that was a complicating factor in terms of our best location that was identified with the 2DR survey was there's a spring that's located down gradient. So there was at least a possibility that we might just be intercepting the same water supply at a higher point topographically than what we're already getting at the lower spring. But ultimately, we felt like the water that was a known, I mean, it's hard to do the investigation, the subsurface investigation, right? To get a drill rig up there, to get an excavator up there. Originally I think when we presented in October, we had talked about maybe getting an excavator up there and digging down and seeing whether or not this water was in fact flowing through this zone, or it's just a pocket. But that takes a lot of effort and expense to get some equipment up there. And then you have to still develop the spring boxes, and these spring boxes are going to be comparable to the flow measurement. So we saw that was $500,000, right, to put those boxes in. So it's not a trivial cost to put in a new spring box and to do it right. So I think we just, our opinion at this point, when we're still doing an alternatives analysis and looking at all options, nothing is off the table. We're relatively speaking in the early stages of our investigation, but we do think that the collecting and distributing those lower springs to the upper treatment plant merits the most consideration at this point.
Plus it's a waterway.
Yes.
It needs to be.
I have a question. Can you guys pull the map back so we can see where the other plant is on there?
I'm not sure if that's included on this one, but we can go to the next. Oh, maybe that's. There it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Just keep going.
There you go.
Okay, so. Again, forgive me because I'm new and this is a lot of different pieces of information. Given that there's a need for increased water storage. I'm just wondering, is there any talk about doing that at the lower treatment plant? Like, could we have more water storage there, or is that a treatment issue? Then we need to bring that treatment plant fully up.
The storage can be raw water or treated water. I mean,
Right, I'm just trying to understand, because again, I don't know, so please explain it to me, why we would go pipe all the way across to the upper water treatment plant.
Because you'd have to pump, right?
and I just want to make sure I understand in terms of if you're using the existing infrastructure to deliver water to the lower treatment plant site.
Yeah.
What are you asking that occur at that location?
I guess I'm
Storage?
not, sorry, I was not clear. If we're looking at the lower springs. And
Yes.
because they have senior water rights and their existing infrastructure, although I did visit them recently and the infrastructure is in very poor condition. Like stacking of redoing spring boxes, I think the majority of the big ones, the small ones will need to be redone. But I'm just curious, is there a way to utilize any of the infrastructure at the lower treatment plant or build around it to have additional storage and concentrate on storage and treatment there rather than concentrate on piping across to the upper treatment plant?
I see James like really wants to say something. James, what do you?
It's been a long ways to be here.
Yeah, Lance, you can talk about treatment.
Jonathan mentioned alternatives analysis. Yeah, there's a lot of different approaches. In addition to I did dig up the old cost estimate for the concept of routing water to the lower facility, using it as raw water storage and pumping to the upper facility. Just for reference, this estimate was put together in 2023, and the value was, without contingency with the crude concept, was $5.2 million. So there's a lot of different ways to do it that will cost considerable amounts of money. There's a lot of different ways the town could spend money. The town only has so much money to spend. There's a lot of different ways to do it. The key term that Jonathan used was alternatives analysis. So before the town makes any decisions about capital improvement phase 2, all of those alternatives will be considered.
Okay.
And again, when we're talking about raw water storage, I think there's operational storage, like where you might put water so that you can pump from it up to the upper treatment plant in that concept, right? But that amount of storage is not going to be, when I talk about raw water storage, you know, I threw out a number of like 30 acre feet. Where you're not going to be able to obtain that kind of volume of storage. That's like, instead of 1 million gallons, that's like 10 million gallon storage tank.
So you'll be looking at where storage tanks like that could be sited. I just want to make sure we're not thinking about one step at a time, because this whole system has been built on one step at a time, and thinking about like, if we have long-term goals of a very large water storage system, I would want to see an analysis done on where that might be best. So then we could focus on how to build a pipeline around that long-term goal. I think the kind of system that I've seen so far up there is really a history of doing one piece at a time and not thinking about where we kind of need to go. So for me, I guess the reason I asked that question was, I'm curious if you are considering that large storage facility in any of the alternative analysis, so that we can compare piping options and treatment options alongside where we might have ultimately want to be putting a storage facility. James?
Yeah, I will say we have, and we are, and we will continue to. It's, you know, there, like you said, it's a system, not just part. And considerations are not only capital cost, but operational burden. So capital replacement cost is, you know, the capital replacement burden over time. And so that's where Jordan and Derek come into play. Really, and for those of you that have been around since we've been involved in 2020, one of the things that we really have emphasized, and I'm just in case I don't get a chance to talk much else today, I want to emphasize is the importance of the personnel to oversee and manage all of this. Some of these are going to require potentially more staffing responsibility than others, and that will also be taken into consideration. So we are looking at it very holistically.
Thank you.
I see Jordan, you have your hand up. Is that, did you want to speak or?
I did. So that was just kind of a lot to unpack because it came all at once. German Creek, there is another lower German Creek that was discovered that we think might be picking up that pocket of water. So we might already be collecting it. Second, I want to address, I understand that people take tours to our springs, but that is never knowledge that's given to us. And I don't feel like that is an appropriate thing. Please let us know when you are going to our springs. Please come and talk to us about it when it is going to happen. And let's not play the game of telephone where you heard this, you heard this. Maybe in poor condition. Of course they're in poor condition. It's been neglected for so long. But you need to act in the active members of what's going on, and not somebody that heard what somebody else said 10 years ago, 10 days ago, 3 days ago. why are we not being involved in what's going on?
Can I just respond to
Yeah, I know it was a tour.
Yeah, I did ask the conservation, Western Conservation should give me a tour that they've done before. And we did invite some other folks along. I was told that staff shouldn't be bothered because of overload of time, and I just wanted to get up and see them. I was also told that there wasn't any problem with that, so I totally appreciate, Jordan, what you're saying. I didn't want to go from word of mouth. I wanted to see them, and I consider it to be part of my self-education. We've been told as board members to speak to experts outside of the board to educate ourselves. And so we're working on this. Sure, but I think that's, I think it's one thing to say that in a public meeting when that hasn't been communicated directly.
Right, and they didn't know, because I think usually the Forest Service, there's more communication. Anyway, let's just say from this point forward, if anybody's going in the springs, because it is public land, but it's also very, it needs to be secure, and it's really important to all of us, make sure there's communication with the town. I'll just say that, from this point forward, because I know Western Slope does tours, but I think the town's involved. I don't know. Anyway, let's just leave it at that, and understood all the way around, and understood, Jordan. Jordan, did you have anything else you wanted to say? I see your hand still up.
Secondly, I just wanted to say is I'm open to a discussion. I think we're all aware that since I can't even give a date, the infrastructure's been a little bit neglected. We are actively working forward to getting this back together. I don't know about anybody else in the community, but I am extremely tired of going out at 2 a.m, breaking asphalt, disrupting your sleep and mine to get these things back in order. Like, it's a rough thing, and we're trying to help you guys. Don't ever think that we're against you guys. It's rough for all of us, but we are actively trying to get you into the cleanest drinking water that is on the Western Slope.
Thank you, Jordan. We understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot we can't see till all of a sudden there's water on the surface. And then you all get called out. I see a hand in the back, but I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna let you come up, and then I'm gonna stop so we can finish the last part of this. And it's almost 8:30. Sorry, Christina, if you'll just wait.
My name is Robert Sabine. I'm in town. It seems like the elephant in the room is storage. And I'm not hearing a lot of discussion about the costs or ideas about storage. That's what I'd really love to hear about, because based on the figures you're giving us, we have a tiny fraction of what we need in storage. So I'd love to hear some aspects of maybe phase 2 focused on that, or phase 3, or what are you thinking in terms of that would be my question.
Well, and some of that was discussed, it takes more time.
Yeah, we're in the early stages of looking at raw water storage is the candid answer to you. We've looked at some of the existing reservoirs. Some of those have been looked at previously and found not to be great alternatives. We're looking at current potential locations that aren't necessarily a decreed water right. But we are including those in the evaluation because we do think the raw water storage is a critical component.
Is that building the storage or digging holes? And what's the general kind of working idea like that?
We're not narrowing down what it would look like. I mean, it could be a tank, but like I said before, even a 2 million gallon storage tank, which is a very large, expensive tank, right, is only 6 acre feet of storage. So it's really not, it tends to not be feasible to build a tank large enough for raw water storage. That's why most municipalities have reservoirs.
Thanks. Jordan, Tyler, and Christina, hang on to your comments. I want to make sure that we get the information from Respect out during this and not get hung up in one section. So if we could turn it over to Respect to talk about the improvement opportunities in the treated water distribution system. Thanks. And we'll take some questions. Till everybody's ready to go home.
The presentation is a little bit out of order at this point, because I think he was gonna bring it home, so I appreciate the opportunity to.
Well, it wasn't in the.
No, we were going from the raw water to the distribution treated water.
Okay.
So that'll be good to know.
In 2019, the town ran out of water. It's taken some time, but a new era of the story of Paonia's water system. New era was the phrase that BJ used on our drive here. Has really been a work in progress and is underway. It starts with the people who are paying attention and caring and investing their time, effort, and the town has two very valuable people doing that now, and Derek and Jordan. You heard the town is discovering springs that no one has seen for decades. It's probably the best part of Jordan's job. It's probably the hardest part of Jordan's job. The town's distribution system passes through the multiple pressure zones, 4+ miles of pipeline just to get it to residents in town. There's a lot there. When we were brought on board, SGM was hired in parallel to an asset inventory because there wasn't really a good inventory of downstream assets as well. And so what I mean by that is everything from Lamborn and Clock that deliver water to the town. Those efforts have yielded a water distribution model that we have paired alongside of a conditions assessment of existing pipelines, the best we know of those pipelines, to look at things like aging pipe, inadequate line sizes, pressure, etc. All of that plays into trying to prioritize capital improvements alongside facility work like storage, like treatment, like everything that needs to happen on the raw water side. Our job has been to, and we were working previously with other staff. So this has been 6 years of kind of trying to keep track of a lot of information, but at this point, a lot of it is there. And capital improvement phase 1 has identified 3 priorities, one of which has already been executed, and that is making sure that the one finished water storage tank the town is relying upon is in good condition. That was a big effort. Not only was it done, but there was additional work done that was very important to future capital improvement work that wasn't even originally conceived of until we got going on it. And that was not only is that tank relined today, but grading was done to make space for future finished water storage at that location, which will be really important for the town. When we talk about storage, yes, raw water storage is important. Finished water storage, redundancy, resiliency also being important. That site is now graded for and now has a temporary storage tank being converted to a permanent raw water storage tank. The 2 main arteries going into town have been improved in stages. The town only has so much money available at its disposal, so it can't do everything all at once. The East Loop used to be steel, it is now PVC. The West Loop, about half of it was redone in 2015. So this is basically doing the rest of that transmission line into town. So now both transmission lines into town will have been converted from a steel water line that was the source of a lot of operational headache because it would break, and just maintaining it was severely cumbersome, burdensome, and costly. So, that was a main priority. The town does have several other water lines that are either aging or inadequately sized. The discussions about what to do next are happening alongside, again, conversations with how to spend money on the mountain and how to spend money at each of the facilities. The only other thing I can think of that's really important, other than being able to respond to specific questions, is this is not atypical for a water system to be doing. This is just public works and how we work together. You've got staff that care, administration that care. You've got 3 engineering firms that are working really well and partnered together. Town water rates have been adjusted to help support paying for these capital improvements, not only phase 1, but future phases 2 and 3 as well. This will not be a fix it and we're done. This will just be ongoing work as long as we're here. Just for perspective, keep that in mind that these capital improvements are not a 5-year, these are 30-year and beyond.
And really, it should have been done, should have been started.
It should have
2
been.
decades ago.
That's fair, and there was a crisis that happened that really said we can't keep band-aiding this. We need to stop being reactive and being proactive. And I think a lot of effort has been put in to that proactive approach. So yeah, I just really want to emphasize there's not like one fix here. There's a lot to tackle, and whether it's us working with Brightwater or us working with SGM, obviously the town leading it, all of the priorities are being weighed against each other. It's a holistic.
And maybe you could talk about how it has to be funded.
We got a new guy here that's gonna help us.
I am a broken record, but people need to understand taxpayers' money, what your 3 pennies that you pay when you come to Paonia cannot go to the water system. It is against state law. The water system can only be paid through user fees, what you pay every month. And if we didn't get these grants and loans, we probably would have had to go to a bank and pay a lot of interest, which every one of us pay. We are all, I think there's 3,000 households getting water from the town of Paonia. 24 consecutive systems, which is unheard of. It's a lot of pipe and a lot of people to try to manage. And then the people in town, we all have to pay for that. But the beauty is, the town, was able to get, I don't know, $10,000, $10 million, half of it in grants and the other half in low interest loans. If that hadn't happened, I can't tell you what our water bills would look like. So I'm just telling you how important it is that we continue to manage our money, ensure that we look like a town that the lending agencies want to loan money to, that we know how to do the projects and we know how to manage the money. We know how to report the money being spent to the granting agency so we can get reimbursed, et cetera. So I know I'm a broken record, but taxpayers aren't doing this. We, the people drinking this water, have to bear the cost of the water we're drinking. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Page. I have a quick question.
Yeah, and now open it to James, if you're ready for questions, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and thanks for reminding us how this is funded. It's really critical that we think about that, I think, especially going forward. And I know tonight's meeting was really meant as like a catch-up. Like, where are we? What have we done? What's happening next? And I know that in the future, we hope to host some other meetings when we have some more possibilities, when these analyses, alternatives have been done, and we can discuss, well, where do we really want to put our money? Is it small distributed storage? Is it large storage? How are we going to do this? Like, all that stuff, I think we don't need to get into tonight, but I just really appreciate the board and all of you coming up to do this so that we could all get on the same page together and then start this conversation again. And to that point, I know that there's some new Water Smart grant opportunities opening up. I think starting this fall and into next year. Are we going to be applying for that next round of Water Smart funding? Does anyone know, or if we should be applying for those grants?
The town has benefited from having a designated person largely driving funding. We have supported on three EIF grants, CWCB grant application, the SRF loan application. But I do say assist, not lead. The town has largely driven those with our, support and assistance, or engineering support assistance. So I do think it's really important that the town has a dedicated person responsible for that.
Is Mary still there? Mary, did you work on those?
I work on all of those.
Could you speak to us a little bit about this, if you would mind?
Oh, gosh, I'd have to have my piece of paper in front of me, for all the grants that I have written for this town.
Yeah, so many, thank you.
It has been, a lot of them. And I didn't know there were more Water Smart grants coming up. I'd be happy to look at those and see what they are and if they fit into this general plan that we're putting together. But again, the grants are specific for certain things. So if what we're doing falls outside the scope of the grants, we can't write the grants. But if they do fall within the scope, and we have a plan, which these guys are working on and doing their best to give us something good alternatives for us to look at, then yeah, I'd be happy to write those grants for you.
Yeah, you asked about the Water Smart specifically, and that one has turned into be very fruitful for the town now. There were others in this room involved in making that happen. The success rate on those isn't great.
But we've gotten every grant we've written.
And that's what I mean, like having that designated person is also really helpful. And it's also, I'm just saying that if you were to hire that out, maybe want to go after higher success and sources of funding, so.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It looks like there's a webinar on the July 21st about the next round. And it looks like there are some projects that might fit for us either in October or February application round. So we can take a look at that as a town. Thank you, Mary.
Absolutely.
Peter Meyer?
Yeah, Jonathan, have you guys done like wetland watershed health approaches to source water reliability? Have you even considered that as a feasibility study? Because one of the grants is the cross section of source water reliability and watershed health. That's what's coming from Water Smart now. It's that's just been in the ethos for, it's just been brewing for years now, but it's that type of funding is here now. So I'm really pushing can you look at that wetland and just what would happen if we restored that wetland, in terms of diurnal flows, how deep is it there? I'll show you right where it is on the map. It's right about here, right? So we have perennial flows. We have perennial flows that would feed this degraded wetland that's on the National Wetland Inventory list. So if you could at least just encompass it in the study, then potentially we'd be set up for other Water Smart money down the line. That's my pitch.
It's heard.
So hang on. Christina, did you want to come up and ask a question?
Just had a quick question about that Western Loop Line. Is that an appropriate question? Western Loop Line, why is it not configured back in the same line that the pipe is already in right now? Why is it that it's on other people's properties and it's people, and they're having a hard time getting the permission to get on other people's properties because it's going under septic systems, under 100-year-old trees? So why wasn't it just configured in that one?
Appreciate the question. Yeah, all these questions are really, really good. I'd like to also table the question of why was it built where it is today. There are a couple of pipelines in town that are built kind of as the bird flies line of sight across properties. In doing that, it makes accessing the water line when there are issues problematic. The town has to. There are no easy access points for some parts of the existing pipeline. So having a pipeline along in parallel to a right of way was something that was considered when we first started looking at this with the town. I think Jordan and Derek, or at least Jordan, was already here when the town started looking at, how it services its consecutive systems, how it might work in with future looping efforts and future capital improvement efforts. And so the proposed and design routing was most easily accessible and best met towns wants for future build out of its distribution system.
Okay, thank you. And then Bill, I saw your hand. Hang on, Bill. Jordan, I'm gonna go to you again, and then Tyler, and then Bill. Jordan, go ahead.
James is exactly right. Bird's line of sight is a great way to lay down a pipeline, but after 50 years, property owners get a little bit grumpy when you're going out there fixing water leaks in the middle of their hayfields. Because it's not a quick fix. It's a huge saturation that it doesn't just dry up and you can just correct the issue of putting their property back because it's wet. Like, what do we do? In the right of way is just a better way for us to be able to maintain it and take care of it. Because it's a hard conversation where it's like, hey, you called in the water leak on your property. Now we have to come in, dig it up, and we're going to have to throw some concrete 5 feet down on your property because it's a thrust block for us. It's a big thing for a homeowner to let us go in there. And a lot of them are really cool with us, but let's take it out of the middle of your property. So there's no more unknowns and we don't have to tear up your property in the middle of haying season.
And Jordan, also fair to say, it's easier to plan around when it's following the right way.
Yeah, like it's the right of way. It is what it is.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. And then Tyler. Go ahead, and then Bill, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I think the work that Jordan guys are doing is commendable, and the hydrology is not easy, and getting up on mountains is not easy, and it's really important that the water flows. Another gentleman made a good differentiation point, and Jordan did as well in assessing these spring boxes and which one of them are primarily snow melt runoff, basically surface water, and which are perennial, i.e. year-round base flow, not dependent on snow melt water sources. And using this really dry time to take a look at that and see, what are our existing year-round perennial sources. With that determination, it can be looked at to maintain that flow, make the most of that flow, because a lot of conversation here around storage is, we need backup water in the case of a drought. And an important point to impress upon everybody is you've got seasonal runoff that is a flood and then a famine, and you have perennial flow, which is nice and steady every day of the year. And where you have more perennial flow being captured or developed, your requirement for storage will decrease as you have a higher daily gallons per minute, millions of gallons per day that is not snow melt dependent. Your whole water system becomes more resilient because you have more steady flow all the time. And I think that's something really important to pay attention of, and developing more perennial flow could be, orders of magnitude less expensive than building more raw and treated water storage. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Bill?
Well, I want to thank everybody for all their good work. Sounds like all good stuff. I don't hear any of it that's actually operationally significant to the water moratorium. What I'm hearing is all the answers that we're planning to gather the data to find out what's going on leaves any solution to the water moratorium, 5-10 years in the future. Again, love for somebody to tell me I'm wrong. I want to particularly thank Cal Rose for taking the initiative to tour some springs. I think that is highly commendable. I want to respond to something that the mayor said that I think is fundamental to the issues that people are going to have with all this as it unfolds. And that is, we have a system that is fundamentally unsustainable for our community. And without additional funding, none of this is going to get us anywhere. And I think there's a management decision step that's not being taken. It's not even being considered here. It's that how much are people here willing to pay on that monthly bill? How much are we able to pay on a monthly bill for water for all these fixes that we need? We're faced with what I would call a cowboy system that's been patched together with bubble gum and baling wire and old garden hoses, and it all needs to be fixed. And we also not only have to fix it, we have to start gathering the money to fix the fix when the fix needs fixing. And so there's got to be, and the money to improve doesn't come from the users. The money to improve comes from the grants. But even without that, the money from the users to keep it going, we've got to figure out there's a limit to how much people can pay and will pay before we're just driving people that aren't millionaires out the door. Okay, and so it's time to figure it out. What can people afford? And let's start tailoring our solutions to a local problem. And if we can do something beyond that, fine. But let's not, what we're doing now is a Hail Mary that if we don't keep getting these grants, nothing's going to work. And I think that's just ridiculous. It's irresponsible. So again, thank you for everybody's good work, but this board has got to pick themselves up and start looking at some of the real hard underlying issues. It's like, is this sustainable on any level? I'm curious.
Jordan has his hand up, but I want to give anybody else in the room an opportunity. They want to speak before I pass it over to Jordan, and then we'll do a summation since it's almost 9. Okay, Jordan, go ahead.
So I don't think that it's a Hail Mary because we've identified many of the big issues that we are trying to address to take this water moratorium down. I constantly send, and it's a little bit of a hard part on mine. Yes, I do. I send data dumps to Respect about our flows coming in. But it's not a Hail Mary. We are actively working to get rid of this moratorium so we can understand how much water is coming off of this mountain, how much water we can do. But the part that we haven't talked about is we can get water off the mountain. We can't treat that much water. So now we're in where we're talking about we need to be able to treat more water. And it's completely plausible. I completely understand the stance, but I can treat 600 gallons a minute through our current skids. If we get 900 gallons a minute down, I cannot treat that. Our skids are not possible for that. Our membranes are not possible for that. So then we look into new treatment options, which has been discussed. It's something that's been discussed, but if we're going to treat 900 gallons a minute, we have to look into new skids, new improvements at the treatment plant. Like, I don't know if we're sitting at a chicken and the egg conversation, but we are sitting in a conversation where this water needs to be coming down and we need to be able to treat it. Like has already been said, there's been times I haven't been able to treat that much water.
Thanks, Jordan. Another consideration, and so I'll just turn it back to you, James, if you want to do any closing remarks.
The question about sustainability really hits home, but I want to back up just a little bit further about question about the water line. That was a really good question about routing. When we're looking at any option, whether it's storage, whether it's an alignment, very rarely is any of it going to pop out as there's no issues doing that. There's no issues going this way. There's no perfect option in most circumstances. The effort that we go through includes alternatives analysis. We do look at those. We do quantify the qualitative best we can to make those decisions. But the comment about sustainability really hits home as we work with a lot of small communities, which is our roots. Being able to afford your water system, especially when it hasn't been invested in, or in some cases decades, it takes catching up. One of the things that's not happening right now is planning without consideration of future capital expenses. We call it capital replacement costs. And so making sure that your budgets reflect what you can replace when it's at the end of its useful life is a part of what we do today, so that you can have that confidence it's sustainable in the long term. We are going to find ourselves in a cycle, just like the water cycle, that it starts with people, planning and execution, and it's going to come back to people. So as long as the town has the public works staff to take care of this, and you can find people that you trust. Hopefully that's the consultants that are all working on your behalf today. Brandon, thank you for being here, and Doug and Claire. And we are working through execution on different parts right now, and we will circle back to the people, which is a new board and why we're here today. So,
okay. Everybody ready to call it a night? Okay, all right.
I just want to say thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, it's good education. Thank you. Great.